Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to How to Close Bigger Deals Faster with Partnerships. My name is Michelle Eisenberg, and I am a program assistant here at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit improving access and knowledge in entrepreneurship to advance economic progress for all. And so, as you will see in the chat in just a moment, the NASDAQ Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to help entrepreneurs fuel prosperity no matter where their journey begins. And so, be sure to check out those links and resources shared in the chat. And we are going to launch a few polls just to step back and take a temperature gauge on how everyone is feeling today. And we use this information to guide the programs we provide for this global community of entrepreneurs. So if there are any specific topics or challenges you would like us to create resources for, definitely please feel free to share those in the chat. Awesome. And just a couple of quick housekeeping notes before we get started. First, let us know where you are dialing in from in the chat. We always love to see where everyone's joining us for our time together today. And second, we are going to have time for live Q&A at the end of the event. So please submit those questions for us at any time using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to get to as many as we can. Awesome. And now, while you are answering these polls, I'd love to just take a moment and recognize the incredible support of our corporate partners. The work that we do at the center would not be possible without the generosity and belief of our partners and funders, including NASDAQ, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, KPMG, Walmart, the Asia Innovation Hub, Wilson Sonsini, the Narit Foundation, and BPM. We are deeply grateful for their partnership and hope you will join us in sharing that appreciation. Awesome. We got one more poll here. Let's see where we got some folks from Nigeria. Wonderful. Washington, D.C., Maryland, Texas, Ohio, Chicago, Greece. Welcome. Other folk from Maryland, Washington, St. Louis, Missouri, Colorado as well, Atlanta, Georgia. Got some more Ohio, Los Angeles, Charlotte, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and of course, California. Welcome, welcome. So awesome to have folks dialing in from all over the place. All right, we got that last poll closed out here. And so, without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our special guest, Juhi Saha, CEO at Partner One. Juhi, such a pleasure to have you on for this topic. I know this has been one that is highly requested, so really excited to have you here, and I'm going to pass it right over to you.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. It's so great to see everyone. I am really excited to talk to you about closing bigger deals faster today. And so I'm just going to share my screen. We're actually going to be doing a lot of work during the session. So if you haven't had a chance, grab the worksheet. I see it in the chat. And I'll also share QR codes because at the end of this, you're going to walk out with your very own partner plan. And I know a lot of you shared some really great questions. Try to weave it into our chat, into our presentation. But if you don't see anything addressing your questions, we'll get to it at the end. So without further ado, can someone let me know if you cannot see my screen? Otherwise, I'll proceed as though you can.
Looks great.
Right. Let's talk about how to close bigger deals faster. I'm Juhi Saha. I'm CEO of Partner One, and I'm very, very excited to be here with you today. And we're going to dive into one of the most underused but extremely, extremely powerful growth strategies for early stage founders and candidly, companies at any stage of growth. For partnerships, you don't need a huge sales team or a massive funding round to close big deals. But what you need is clarity, you need alignment, and you need strategic collaboration. And so my goal today is to equip you with tools, examples, and a new perspective on how you grow your business smarter, not harder, by building partnerships that will actually move the needle for you. And a bit about me. I'm CEO of Partner One, as Michelle mentioned, and we help companies grow profitably and globally through partnerships. And I've got over 20 years of experience in tech, launching new businesses, new programs. I've led partnerships at Microsoft, where I built and ran their flagship program for high growth startups called Pegasus. I also built out a high growth partner motion at a startup called Clearbit that helped lead to our acquisition by HubSpot. And before that, I was at Qualcomm, at Intel, and now at Partner One. We work with hundreds of companies like you to grow faster through smarter collaboration. So I've been in your seat. I know firsthand how frustrating it can be to feel like you're doing everything right. You're showing up to pitch meetings, you're refining your messaging, you're updating your deck, and you're still not seeing the growth you want to see. I've also seen on the other side how just one well-placed partnership can make all the difference and just change the trajectory of your business. And we'll actually talk about some examples today. I always like to say partnerships, they're a multiplier, and the good news is they're available to you right here, right now, and we're going to get to work soon. So I'm going to start with some myth busting. Most people think growth comes, from either hiring more sales rep or you're spending more on ads. But what if there's a smarter way to grow? Growth isn't just about sales and marketing. People keep saying we need to hire more AEs, we need to raise more to hit our goals. But show of hands, has anyone here seen Moana? I'm a huge Moana fan, and I hope there are some here too today. And I thought it was a fitting analogy because you don't always need to paddle harder. You can just put up the sail and harness the winds of partnership. And, here it says the ocean is calling, growth is calling you. So if you're a founder, which I assume you all are here, you're juggling products, sales, hiring, fundraising. I know the idea of adding partnerships to your already full plate can sound very, very daunting, but done right, partnerships are actually going to save you a ton of time and they're going to help you create leverage. So, we're going to talk about how you do the right things with the right people who can help you grow through partnerships. And I had a comment here where it says, partnerships, they unlock exponential growth without exponential spend. I've seen that happen over and over at companies, and I really hope you're able to tap into that today. And so, just a PSA, if you haven't gotten your workbook, scan the QR code, grab it because we're going to get to work soon. And so I cannot see the chat. So, Michelle, Anna, if anything comes up, please let me know. But let's just start with definitions. What is a partnership? You see this word thrown around quite frequently. When I say partnership, I'm not talking about these really big joint ventures or formal alliances that need lawyers and 9 month sales cycles. I'm talking about strategic collaborations such as referrals, reselling, co-marketing, bundle services, or ecosystem plays with companies like Amazon or Salesforce or Microsoft. And these give you access to what you don't have today through the channels you need, more revenue, more credibility, and capabilities. So partnerships, they're all about mutual value. And when I think about partnerships, the way it works is someone wins when you win and vice versa. So they're much faster to stand up than most people realize. And they're really, really powerful for early stage companies that need reach without the burn. And so just to reframe this in your minds, for early stage founders, think of RCC, revenue through referrals and resellers, credibility through brand boosts and co-marketing, and capability through technical integration or implementation support. Expanding your growth in all three of these areas. So I'm going to pause, let you scan that QR code because we are going to get to work. Right, so we're all business leaders here. We look at metrics, and in my mind, there are several metrics that matter that partnerships can drive. And there are a lot more than 10. I've covered the top 9 here in my mind. And to pique your interest, here are some things that partnerships can drive. My favorite, qualified pipeline. Who doesn't love a qualified lead? The second, direct revenue. They also shorten your sales cycles, which is really great, especially in this environment we're in. They increase retention, and we all know how much easier it is to retain a customer than to acquire a new one. They allow you to access new markets, whether that's a new country, a new region, or a new industry vertical. They also provide you with more mind share and visibility. If you're partnering with a big company, for example, I've seen a lot of companies work with Google or Microsoft or Amazon or Salesforce, and it brings immediate credibility. And something companies don't think about is they actually provide access to non-dilutive capital. So if you're thinking of fundraising, consider how you could use partnerships to actually get access to, for example, if you're a SaaS company, access to cloud credits or benefits or incentives or cashback opportunities that don't require you to raise. And number 9, M&A. I've personally lived through a situation where partnerships led to an acquisition. And I'm happy to talk about that in a little bit, but it's a really powerful lever for many, many ways to grow. And so hopefully I'm sparking some ideas in your mind about how powerful this can be. And I like to make things concrete through examples. So I'm going to pause here and ask, are there any immediate burning questions in the chat, or should I keep going with examples? All right, I'm going to go ahead with examples. So just like anything in life, one size does not fit all. And I wanted to share an example of partnerships in B2B software. So pick a hypothetical SaaS company. How could they use partnerships to grow? Well, here are just some of the ways they could use partnerships. So they could use tech partnerships, which is where your product integrates with someone else's. And think about Calendly and Stripe integrating over here. They're both complementary, they both work really well together. And that kind of tech integration allows them to access more customers. The next one is alliances, where you can partner with a big company, for example, like Microsoft, and use their network to sell to enterprise customers. Another avenue are channel partners, which are companies that basically resell your product or implement it. And this allows you to not have to do the heavy lifting of software integration, but just outsource that to another company that will also sell on your behalf. And finally, let's not forget brand or influencer partnerships where you can work with a company that's got, or a person that's got a huge presence on TikTok or Instagram or LinkedIn and use their network to grow. So I promised a case study, and here's one that I actually lived through. It's a company called Clearbit, and I'm going to talk about how they actually used HubSpot's ecosystem to build credibility, shorten sales cycles, and drive partner-led revenue that helped fuel our acquisition by HubSpot. And I've included a QR code if you're interested. I did an article on it. You can read more about it. But after I left Microsoft, I actually went to a startup called Clearbit. And when they recruited me, we were small, we were fast growing. We were a data analytics company in the marketing space, and we were very well known there, but pretty unknown in other circles. Like when they reached out to me, I had no idea who they were. And then I did some research and realized the potential. So I was brought in to build out the partner organization, and we partnered with HubSpot, which is a CRM platform that's got a really active ecosystem. I'm sure a lot of you are HubSpot users. I know our company uses HubSpot. But something really interesting came through that relationship with HubSpot. We co-created educational content, we hosted events, we created product integrations, we sold through their marketplace. And this opened up warm intros and it built a lot of trust. And trust is really, really important in partnerships and sales. Because we were introduced, and endorsed by a partner like HubSpot that the customer already knew, a lot of doors open for us. And that's the magic of ecosystem momentum. It's not about brute force, it's not about cold calling, it's about this transfer of trust. And that's what turned a pretty scrappy startup into a growth engine. And it had a very happy conclusion. A couple of years later, HubSpot acquired Clearbit, in large part actually because of the partner ecosystem we'd built around us. And again, if you're interested in learning more, that's a QR code to read about an article. But hopefully, I'm starting to spark ideas now about how you can use this in your own business because we are going to start talking about your growth goals. So, if anyone hasn't had a chance to grab your workbook, please do so. Here's the QR code. You can just download it, print it out, and I'll give you a minute to do so. And can you just put in the chat, yes, if you've gotten a copy, and then we can dive into the exercise? Let me see if I can see the chat. Awesome. All right, so we're going to go to page 1, which is your growth focus. Now we're going to talk about what's your top growth priority over the next 6 to 12 months. Are you looking for more customers, more credibility, more capabilities? Maybe even breaking into a new market? So you can drop that into the chat if you want, or you can jot it down in your workbook. You have ideas flying in your head. I am so glad to see that, Samson. So in your workbook, you can actually pick one of the top priorities you have and then explain, why did you choose this goal? We've got some prompts for you. For example, what's held you back from achieving this so far? What would success look like if you hit this goal? How much budget or resources can you realistically commit to pursuing partnerships? And Siobhan, if it's all of the above, maybe close your eyes and pick one because we're going to work on just one right now. I'll give you maybe 60 seconds. Let's take a minute to jot these down. You can always come back to it. Seeing a lot of grow customer base and grow credibility. And take a moment to think about why. Why is that important and why does that matter to you? And jot that down in your workbook. Okay. So I'm going to assume that we have our answer. A lot of it is customer base, credibility. Great response, Vanita. Okay, so now that you know what kind of partnership makes the most sense for you, or rather what you're pursuing, we'll talk about the kind of partnership. And it's going to just be a lens that we're going to use for the rest of this session. So now let's talk about finding the right partners. And I am going to start with why most founders choose the wrong partners. So this is where a lot of partners get stuck. And I have seen hundreds of partnerships, and here the common trends or themes I see, they chase the wrong partners. For example, the biggest name they can find because they think that the bigger the company, the better the association. But, these big partners, they can be slow, they can be distracted, or they're just not aligned with you. And the best partners are not always the ones that are flashiest. They're the ones that have shared resources, shared incentives. They have a common ICP. They have shared customers or complementary customers. And most important, they're the ones that want to work with you now. Because misalignment, that happens when you're doing all the work and they're not invested. And I am sure a lot of us have had experiences where we're really excited, we show up, we start doing the work, and then there's nothing on the other side. So, really important to remember this is about strategic alignment. It's not just about brand recognition and a one-sided thing. So, choose your partners wisely. And some examples of a bad fit, and bear this in mind as you pick partners, is there's no overlap in your customer base. Doesn't have to be 100% overlapping, but there should be some commonality. Otherwise, what are you partnering about? The other one is unclear incentives from the other side, and also very complicated or big name partners that have absolutely no urgency. And now let's talk about where do you look for the right partners? So some of your best partnerships are hiding in plain sight. Think about consultants who already work with your target customers, niche influencers with loyal communities, vendors that your buyers already trust that they're working with today. It's really important to look at your existing network. Some of your best partnerships come from asking our own customers who else they're working with and who they're relying on. You can look at your LinkedIn connections, your CRM, your inbox. The big thing to remember is it's your shared audience. It's not just a warm intro. So again, hidden gems I've seen are often vendors that are working with your ideal customer profile, freelancers or consultants who your customers trust and they influence decisions, and also communities and Slack groups. Wherever your customers are showing up, that's where you want to be because your ideal partners can typically be found there. And again, ideas, I always like having concrete examples. So let's talk about 5 ideal first partners for early stage founders. One example could be a software vendor that integrates with your product. Another could be a services firm that supports the same customers you do, but doesn't compete. Another could be an industry specific consultant or a coach. 4 could be a community or a membership group in your space. Another one could be an independent reseller or influencer with domain expertise. And you don't have unlimited time, so prioritization really matters. I like to use a simple 2x2 impact versus effort matrix. So ask yourself, is this potential partner high impact? Do they serve your customers and move the needle? And is it low effort? Can you activate it quickly? If yes, that's the blue quadrant with the heart. You need to pursue this immediately. If it's high effort and low return, that goes on the back burner. That's the pink quadrant, because this will help you say no to distractions and focus on where your energy will actually yield some results. So let's actually talk about an example as to where this could fit. So let's say I have company A, and that's the black box with white text, and company B, that's the gray box with black text. For each of these companies, they could be working with these 5 different kinds of partners. Where they fit in the matrix could be really different. So as you can see, black box with white text, a software vendor that integrates with their product, that's really high effort and low impact. So they don't want to prioritize that. For company 2 with the gray box and black text, that same kind of partner, it's high impact, medium effort. So it goes in a different quadrant. So look at this matrix, pick your partners, and prioritize the ones you want to work with. And to make that real for you, we're going to go back to a workbook. So if you're joining late or you haven't downloaded it, please grab your workbook. And on the second page, we're actually going to brainstorm 3 or 5 companies or even individuals that already serve your ideal customer. And let's talk about what kind of value can you bring to each of these partners? Like, what can you do for them? And then what would that partnership be focused on? Because we talked about customers, we talked about credibility, but then what are you actually going to work on in the partnership? Is it revenue? Is it capability? Is it credibility? So we've also included examples of some good partners in the worksheet. So use that as the basis as you jot down your top 3 to 5 potential partners. And we'll give it about another 60 seconds. And once you're done, drop it in the chat. Just say, yes, you're done, and we'll move on to the impact versus effort matrix. See a couple of yeses. Okay, great. So it looks like folks have jotted down 3 to 5 companies. So now let's flip a page and put them in our quadrants. I've included an example of what this could look like. So if you want to draw a 4x4, you could do that, or you could actually use the worksheet that has your partner's name. Is it high or low effort? And then add in a priority once you've filled out the high versus low impact versus effort matrix and jot down some notes. At the bottom, we've given an example. For example, your partner Healthmark Solutions, they could be high impact, they're low effort, they're the ideal partner, they're in that blue heart quadrant. So give them a high priority and add notes such as they're an existing vendor to our prospects, so we could probably do a fast pilot with them. And this is a little more involved, so we'll give a little more time here. But once you're done jotting down your top 2 or 3, just drop a yes in the chat and we can move forward. And Kim, that's a great question. Do they involve financial compensation, such as sponsorships, etc.? It could be either of both. For example, if you're providing access to your audience, you could ask for sponsorship as a way to fund the partnership. And because on both sides, someone's winning, you're giving access to your network, you receive a sponsorship, they get access to your network, so they get to grow their customer base. So at the end of the day, each company benefits in one way or the other. And if you have more specifics, we can talk about it after the presentation. So I'm seeing a couple of yeses. Hopefully you've mapped over your impact versus effort matrix and you have a couple of partners that could be high priority. Awesome. Great to see John. Vanita. All right. Now let's talk about structuring these win-win partnerships to follow up on the question that was in the chat. So again, partnerships do not need to start with a complex legal doc. They don't take 9 months or a lifetime to create. You don't have to give up your firstborn child. You can start with 5 easy models. These are some of my favorite structures. The first could just be a referral plus commission. So they send you leads, you pay a percentage, and hopefully, Kim, that answers your question. You could also do revenue sharing where you both sell each other's products bundled together or each other's products independently, and you split the proceeds. Number 3 is co-marketing or joint, webinars where you can host a webinar together, you create content together, and you can both reach out to people who attend. Another one is reselling. So you could have reseller agreements where they include your offer in their pitch. And this is really, really powerful because what it does is anytime your partner sells a deal, they can just bundle you right in and resell you. And you've agreed on a price, they can add their markup, and everyone's happy. And you get to reach so many more customers that way. And then the fifth is a bonus. It's handshake partnerships where you don't require a contract, you're testing out the waters, you have trust, you trust the partner, you have a shared goal. I would proceed a little bit with caution if you're exposing things like your client base or information that is pretty confidential. But if you're just doing something like a joint webinar with a handshake agreement that you'll work together on the outcomes, that's fine. That's low lift, low risk. So choose what fits your resources and your relationship. It could be one or more of the above in the webinar plus handshake example I shared. And another case study. So I really like this one because one founder I advised partnered with an agency that already had access to their ideal customers. And it led to their revenue just doubling year over year when they started working with this agency. And what they did was very, very simple. They agreed to co host a webinar, they split up the registrations, and they followed up together. And within 6 weeks, that partnership had led to 3 new clients for the SaaS company. They had zero ad spend, and they had a very trusted distribution channel because the agency realized they could add more value to their customers and also make some money off the margin for selling the software tool. So they agreed to a couple of very simple things, messaging, the handoff, incentives to the agency sellers to put the software company forward. And again, the tools they use are very basic. They use Google Docs, Calendly, Slack. That was it. They were done. And the key was that it wasn't complex. There was a lot of shared trust. They were fast. There was a lot of speed to execution, and they kept the ask very simple and very specific. So that specificity and that simplicity, it really allows you to execute and win. All right. So to make any partnership work, both sides are going to need clarity. So we personally like to use a one-page partnership plan that outlines 5 things. Who's your audience? What's the shared goal? What are the mutual benefits? Who's the target customer? What are the goal? We talked about this already. So leads, revenue reach. What's the timeline and key activities? Who's doing what? And what does success look like? How are we going to measure it? So this is going to ensure that you're not just aligning at the kickoff and everyone feels warm and fuzzy and then nothing happens, which I'm sure we've all experienced. Best of intentions, but it doesn't have much follow through. Having a plan like this makes sure that you actually follow through beyond the kickoff and you stay aligned throughout. And it just protects the relationship, it accelerates results. So we are actually going to put together our own one-page partnership plan in a bit. But before that, I know we're far from Halloween, but I wanted to talk about common pitfalls and how to avoid them. So you don't hear a lot about the partnerships that fail because they fail quietly. And it's not because they weren't a good idea. I'm sure they were great ideas, but they fail because they lack follow through. And we call it the partnership graveyard. No owner, no follow through. It just dies quietly. And there are several causes that we've seen, some trends we've seen, such as one company asks for too much too soon and people get overwhelmed and just don't follow through. You can over engineer the first version. You may way more complicated than that. Google Docs plus webinar plus Slack partnership we just talked about. Another thing is there's no incentive, there's no alignment, so there's no reason to really work on this. And a big thing that can be the death knell of any partnership is there's no exec buy-in. So your partner team wants to do a partnership with a company, and then the C-suite comes in and says, no, this is a waste of resources. It's been 2 days since you launched this partnership. Where's the ROI? So make sure you get exec buy-in and you get some breathing room, some time and space to show results. And again, things that cause a partnership to go south, there's no single point of ownership. There's no clarity on next steps. It's too complicated. Don't let perfection get in the way of progress. So start simple, start lean, assign a point of contact. So a lead, set up a recurring check-in, and just make sure you're focused on the simplicity and communication because that will keep you alive and out of the partnership graveyard. And so as promised, let's build our one-page partnership plan. If you're joining late or you haven't had a chance, just feel free to grab the workbook we're working on. It's in the QR code. And you will see that we get to add a partner name, target audience, your shared goal, which we just talked about, mutual value. What are you going to win together? And then activities that we're going to work on. Is it going to be co-marketing, a referral agreement, joint product, webinar, something else? And then your timeline. Is it going to be this week, next month, 6 months? Who's going to lead it? And then success metrics. And we've given you an example plan at the bottom so that you can refer to it if you need ideas on how to build this out. So this is a little bit longer. And let's give this a minute and a half if that's okay with everyone. And some things you can think about again, acquiring more customers, building credibility in a new vertical, expanding your capabilities, entering a new market. If you're struggling with ideas, throw that in the chat and we can see if we can help. Aisha, do you have a company? Yeah, I would pick a company that in that matrix is high impact, low effort, super easy to work with, but will drive big impact in terms of revenue, customers, whatever you're looking to drive. And if you can decide, just pick one, because this is just an example. You'll have this to come back to. Right, if you're done, please drop a yes and we can move forward to execution. All right, thank you. I love that you guys are so engaged. I can't wait to see your plans. So now let's actually talk about executing these partners. Well, not these partners, these partnerships that drive sales. What does that look like? I've seen a lot of questions about partnerships. How do we execute it? So let's talk about starting small and scaling fast. So a lot of founders here, would any of you launch a product without an MVP? Drop a no if no, you wouldn't ever do anything without creating an MVP. Yes, Lakshmiya, no. So MVPs, as we know for products, it's really important. Like you would never launch a massive new opportunity without testing it out. So think about your first partnership as an MVP. It's minimal viable partnership. Uh, can you test a single initiative in 30 days? And the next month by August 22nd, can you create a landing page, co-branded piece of content, a joint event? It doesn't have to be super complicated, as I've shown. You just need to build it, launch it, and learn from it. So you'll learn very, very quickly if your partner is engaged, if the customers care, if this is landing, and whether you should keep going or pivot. And that, I think, is way more valuable than a perfect contract or a 3-month planning process, because one's going to get money in your company's bank account, the other is just going to spin cycles. So, as an example, you can do some very simple co-marketing that leads to co-selling, that leads to formal revenue sharing. So you test it, build on it, and then you scale it. And again, to make things concrete, we're here to talk about how you close bigger deals with partnerships and how you do it faster. So one of the most underrated benefits of partnerships is deal velocity and deal size. Because, oh, thank you, Chris. Because when a trusted partner introduces you to a prospect, you get to bypass that cold outreach. You're getting immediate credibility, and you're often getting access to decision makers faster because that's probably who they're going to connect you to. I have personally seen when I ran the Pegasus program at Microsoft, we worked with a bunch of high growth companies. I've seen companies double their average contract value, their ACV, to by huge orders of magnitude, actually more than just double, just by co-selling with a more established brand or service provider. One company, I will never forget this example, they went from selling five-figure contracts and it would take them months to close. They went from doing that to closing their first seven-figure $1 million plus deal with an enterprise account in 6 weeks. And anyone here who has sold to enterprise knows that those enterprise deals take forever. This company closed it in 6 weeks and added a couple of zeros along the way. So partners, they shorten cycles, they increase trust, they increase valuations. This company's latest valuation has more zeros than I thought possible. And they also lead to M&A activity. So again, partners, they can warm up your prospects. They can vouch for you. They can close the deal and bring it to you. And they can expand existing deals because if you're in a deal cycle and a partner that your customer or your prospect trusts comes in, they can actually help you expand it. And I've seen this happen. They can increase retention, which is huge, right? You don't have to acquire new customers. You can just grow from that baseline. And they give you access to new markets. And we'll talk more about that next. So, credibility, I think it's your best sales tool, and partners bring that to the table in spades. And an example near and dear to my heart, because I'm ex Microsoft, and this speaks for itself, it's the software company called Trade Ledger that started selling through the Microsoft Marketplace. And their first deal was with a huge bank, and it grew from 4 million to 25 million. So more than six times, an eight-figure leap. And that's because they were going in with a partner like Microsoft. And there are a couple of tactical points there that help speed up the deal. But just that that is just insane to me, right? Like to be able to do that kind of velocity to increase your deal size. So please consider using partnerships as you grow your business. And some fun examples. So, yes, I am actually about to give an example of a B2C business partnership. So, that's a great question, Karen. Partnerships can actually help you break into new markets. So, you're trying to enter a new vertical, you're trying to enter a new region, you're trying to reach new customers there, you're trying to drive top and bottom line revenue. Yes, please, all of the above. And a partner can be your translator and your advocate in new areas. They already know the local norms. They understand the language, they understand the pain points, the nuances. So, whether it's a reseller in a new country or in an industry specific consultancy, the trust they've spent years, decades building, that becomes your ticket. And you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to go in and figure it out or spend a year learning the terrain. I remember I was talking to a company yesterday that was trying to sell into Japan, and you have to have access to people who speak the language, understand the cultural nuances, and partners just open that door and they fast track the journey. So here's some examples that I thought were very interesting and were recent too. So on the left side, recently Lucid announced that they were teaming up with Uber and Nuro to create robo-taxi services. And this is a way for Lucid to just leapfrog Waymo and Tesla and work with Uber that invested $300 million into Lucid and also work with another company and just create a niche for themselves in the robotaxi space. That was pretty clever of Lucid. Another area was the recent JetBlue and United partnership. I don't know if any of you have seen this, but JetBlue and United announced that they were creating this Blue Sky program, and it's a unique consumer collaboration that links loyalty programs. And what that means is customers can earn points on each other's platforms. They get to travel to more areas, more cities. They get better pricing. They get priority boarding. So you're a JetBlue Mint customer, you get the same level of priority with United and vice versa. So it's mutually beneficial. Both these companies get to grow. On the business side, they get to keep their costs down, their customer satisfaction scores go up. So a lot of benefits all around for everyone. And then a very fun one was M&M collaborating with Kate Spade. I thought this was really cute and clever because it was a limited run edition, so it just drove up that FOMO factor. People wanted it, it was exclusive, and it was really clever because M&Ms, they bring back nostalgia for older folks like myself. Uh, it's very cute, it's quirky, it fits with the Kate Spade brand, but it just opens the door to different generations of people who want to go and buy this product and this collaboration. And it introduces both Eminem and Kate Spade to a broader set of prospects. So here's some examples. Hopefully, they're sparking ideas of fun thoughts or interesting blue ocean areas where you can play when it comes to partnerships. And even more examples of partnerships. So SaaS, if you're a SaaS company, you can partner with resellers. These are great because they're going to sell your software to customers that already work with them and trust them. Another are tech platforms like Salesforce, Amazon, Google, Microsoft that customers trust. And then local services firms. So, for example, you're selling to legal firms. There are typically companies that sell there. Just work with them and they can open the door for you. Or if you're going to a new country, they can open the door for you. For IT services, again, you could work with tech platforms that your customers trust. There are local associations that you can join and sell through them. And again, resellers and software that your customers work with or they need. So if you're an IT service provider, your customer needs security software, you could work with, Proofpoint or SentinelOne or any Microsoft, all these companies that they already know and trust. So you join their partner programs. And in CPG, this is back to kind of where the M&M slash Kate Spade partnership was going. But even if you have, for example, a niche drink or food that caters to a certain segment, you could partner with influencers, resellers, venues that your customers frequent. Actually, this is a great way to grow. For example, if you're selling to clothing to for bicyclists, you could partner up with bike studios. And as you can tell, this is not I don't know why I brought up that example. It's not my area of strength, but you could partner with bike studios. I think Soul Cycle, you could sell there. If you're doing selling yoga gear, yoga clothes, I've seen some really successful partnerships actually in that space that cater to a whole lifestyle. And companies partner with brands that people associate with those lifestyles, venues that people associate with lifestyles, influencers that people associate with lifestyles. So while I'm not a cyclist, I can totally see using places, these cycling studios or high-end boutiques that cater to elite athletes to sell your product. And with that, let's come up with a quick action plan. I know we don't have a lot of time left and I want to save some time for Q&A, but the very last page of your workbook lets you come up with a very quick plan. And just to recap, partnerships let you grow without hiring, scale without ads, close without cold outreach. But again, remember alignment, simplicity, momentum. So start with one focused partner. That's what we're going to put down in our plan and test something small. Then build from what works. And you know that this is a really powerful lever. And so hopefully today you have got the tools you need to implement it. And if you're serious about building a partner program or a partnership motion this quarter, we'll be sharing a free partner strategy audit where we'll assess your go-to-market motion and identify areas of opportunity. So we'll share that out and with you when it's ready. So if you have 60 seconds, grab the last page, write down who you're going to reach out to, get the call booked, and then write down what you're going to pilot. And I can't wait to hear what you build. So please reach out and share your wins and your success stories with us. And with that, you can scan the QR code to email me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. And thank you so much for your time and your focus and your energy.
Juhi, thank you so much. That was incredible. Such an amazing plan. Just like laying out everything step by step can be so helpful. I know a lot of entrepreneurs, as they're going through different processes, sometimes you get to a point where you're like, okay, what's next? And this kind of, leads you through to the end of the process and like closing the deal. So really, really amazing. I know we have time for maybe a couple questions here. We got some questions in the chat here. If anyone has questions, drop them in that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We have one question here that I think is actually applicable to a lot of folks. This person has a healthcare company. They're seeking partnerships with healthcare providers and facilities. How can you protect your business model so that your ideas, your thought leadership, intellectual property are not stolen and executed by some of the bigger providers and businesses you're trying to seek partnership with?
Great, great question, which is why that handshake agreement should be used only with caution. The first, NDA. However, an NDA is only as good as the people you signed it with. So I would make sure everything you send out has a copyright. You can see that we use that on our presentations, copyright so and so, all rights reserved. If it is something that's repeatable, actually consider copywriting it. Get your trademarks, protect yourself because that's your brand, your IP really matters. And the other thing is you can use tools such as DocSend, for example, that allow you to understand who's accessing what. If it's joint content, sign an agreement saying that we are licensing our IP to you, for example. And that's a way for you to make money through a partnership, right? And it's recurring revenue for you. And I I would strongly encourage you to have licensing agreements, time limits on how long the access is available for. And there are many ways to protect yourself. I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but it's really important to protect yourself. So those legal agreements, they are important. And the things I would watch out for again, licensing, NDA, charging for licensing, charging for access. If they're asking you to put a proposal together, charge them for it because it's your IP that you're putting on the table. So just protect
Absolutely.
yourself. And I'm happy to talk more about your specific case, so feel free to ping me.
Amazing. Wonderful. Awesome. I know we had another question. Actually, a couple folks were asking this. If you could just share a little bit more about, like, partnerships versus like sponsorships. And I know somebody was asking specifically about like, you know, what have you seen in terms of like how exclusivity kind of comes into play? If you partner with somebody and then, maybe you partner with a certain kind of business and then you can't partner with anyone else that's
Yeah.
in that line, what are some of the common things that you've seen in that respect and how founders might navigate that?
I think when I'll start with exclusivity. So when you're looking at exclusivity, ask why is that important to the other party? And then make sure you monetize that because there's clearly some value and you're leaving some money on the table by being exclusive. So figure out what that is, multiply that by a big number, and then ask for that. Also put a time cap on it. Have an exit clause. For example, if they just have, and this is something I've seen, they have an exclusivity clause with you and then they do nothing, absolutely nothing, then your business will sink. So have contingencies. For example, we will be exclusive with you and expect a minimum revenue of XYZ. If this is not paid, you must pay us this amount to continue or some kind of contingency. I know this is recorded, so I'm trying to watch my words. However, I would make sure that you plan for contingencies and understand why the exclusivity is important and what you're giving up, and then protect for that.
Amazing.
And
Wonderful.
sorry, and the other was sponsorship, right? And
Oh, yeah.
sponsorship. Yeah. Sponsorship is great if you're putting together events, your newsletter, etc. You're basically selling access to people who trust you, and that comes with a price, right? Because it's your reputation on the line, and you want to make sure you're adding value to your customer base. So with sponsorship, I don't necessarily think of it as a partnership. I think sponsorship is a one-way deal to a degree. And with sponsorships, I would put in parameters around behavior. So, for example, if you are having someone sponsor a spot in your newsletter, what are they getting? What can and cannot they do? Also, time limits, things like that. Be very explicit so there are no surprises for anyone. That's the one thing I would ask folks do. Just be explicit. Clarity, clear as kind, right? Isn't that what Brené Brown said? Yeah.
Exactly. Ah, love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think we maybe have time for one more question. And I know we had some folks asking, I know we have a couple folks that are in the nonprofit space. Any considerations, specific to nonprofits that are looking for partners?
Yes. Can you give me a little more context? I saw that question. And with nonprofits, what is the company? Is it a software company selling to nonprofits, services company, something else?
I know there was someone in the chat here that was saying that the question I have was kind of like more in regards to like um you know like are there extra steps that kind of need to be taken for a nonprofit to like fulfill the needs that would like be required for a partnership deal to close. um but if that person wants to sound off in the chat,
I
that
think,
would be cool.
yeah, if you can add more context, that would be helpful. I think every industry has its nuances, so I would look there. I know so we work with some companies, services and software companies that work with nonprofits, and it's a bit of a tricky environment. So whatever grace you can give them at this point, I would do that. There are great programs actually available to help nonprofits or, for example, sell software to nonprofits. So look into those. A lot of these bigger companies, these enterprises have services and software that they sell at a lower price that you can make available to your nonprofit customers. I don't know
Awesome.
if that was a question, but
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
it.
no, I think that's great. Awesome. And yeah, of course, I know we have so many questions here. We have Juhi's information here, so please reach out and connect with her. And I just as we're closing out here, I know you mentioned a couple kind of highlights, but if you had just one key takeaway that you wanted to leave with everyone here today, what would that be?
Just start. You have your plan. Just start, do something simple, learn from it, and scale it.
Wonderful. Juhi, this has been so incredible. Thank you so much for speaking to this community, sharing all your insights and setting such an amazing overview for this process. And on behalf of the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone in attendance today, we are just so thankful that you joined us.
Thank you so much for having me, and here's to your growth.
Yes. Amazing. Make sure to connect with Juhi. Click those links in the chat. We'd love for you to join us for upcoming webinars to our audience here, and you can use the links in the chat to view those upcoming events. And thank you all so much for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming you back online with us soon.